dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon. This back here, that's Bernard. He's my October co-host. It's hard to believe we're almost done with October already, but anyway, Bernard nor I thought we'd be reading the Britney Spears memoir this October, or ever, but here we are. Honestly, when I first heard this book was coming out, I didn't really have any tug to read it. I was a teenager in the mid to late 90s, so I was around for a lot of this, you know. And while I was curious to hear her point of view on it, just for whatever reason, I wasn't really drawn to read it until I saw it in person on the shelf. And then I was like, you know what, the curiosity got the better of me, and I was like, I need to read it. When I was a kid in the 90s, I wasn't a big Britney fan. I wasn't a big pop music fan in general. My tastes at that time tended to veer more towards alternative. I loved the Pumpkins, I loved Pearl Jam, I loved Hole, Courtney loved the whole bit. That was more my speed, but you know, I knew all the radio hits, I knew of the gossip, and because no matter what, I was still a teenage girl, you know. Anyway, I was happy to finally get to sit down and read it today. And I read it in one day. I plowed through it. And I'm not going to sit here and give you a rating, as I do for a lot of books. I'm not going to give it a 1 to 5 star rating, because as with any time I read a memoir, and if you read them, you probably understand this feeling. It's like, it's hard. You know, you don't want to do that. This is a person sharing their story, and we witness it, and we'll just leave it at that, you know? But I definitely found a lot of it interesting. What that woman went through was a lot. It was a lot. And I can't imagine in 2023, like, when she's talking about when she was a young teenager, she would go on interviews on national television. She'd be asked about her breasts, whether they were real or fake. She'd be asked if she was a virgin by grown men. And, like, I was trying to think of, like, what would be an equivalent example of this today. Like, what sort of pop star, who's a young pop star right now? The only one I could think of was Olivia Rodrigo. Like, could you imagine if that girl walked into an interview and was asked the kind of questions that Britney was asked in the 90s? It's absolutely bonkers that that was ever okay. So anyway, this book, we get to learn a little bit about her childhood, her grandparents, her great-grandparents. She tries to paint a bit of a portrait of why her father is the way he is, because without a doubt, her father is the villain of this story, of her story. You know, she tries to show a bit of compassion at the beginning, tries to get us to offer him a bit of compassion by showing us the way that he was raised. But as the book goes on, I couldn't care less about what he went through, because what he put her through is inexcusable. You know, you have terrible things happen to you, but you have to own them and heal from them and move on, and not torture your own children in similar ways to the ways that you were tortured. That's just not acceptable. So anyway, we got a bit of tea, for lack of a better word, for when her and Justin Timberlake were dating in the late 90s, early 2000s, I think like 99, and then 2000, 2001. I honestly think, all things considered, she was quite kind to him, considering, you know, some of the things that they had went through together, some of the ways that he acted. I think he got off easy. She made it very clear that she had loved him very much, that they had loved each other, that they were young, and you know, they were so young. So, you know, they were barely 20 years old when a lot of this stuff happened. So for him, you can feel a bit of compassion for, because he was also a kid. You know, she was a kid and he was a kid. I've never really liked Justin Timberlake. So this certainly didn't make me like him anymore, but yeah, I think she went easy on him. We get to learn more about their relationship, about her relationship with Kevin Federline, who she later went on to marry. I don't know, I just, all in all, I thought it felt very conversational. It felt like how a friend would talk to you. It's written very simply. I don't know if there was a ghostwriter involved in this. I would assume there was, because there often is with celebrity memoirs, you know, and the level of involvement a ghostwriter has can vary. It can be, you know, anything from the author, or sorry, the celebrity gives the author notes and then the author writes it, to they sort of write it together. Maybe the celebrity writes it and then the author goes in and heavily edits it. I don't know if there was a ghostwriter involved in this. I couldn't see if there was in the book, because normally it's listed somewhere, like usually on this page somewhere, if there was a ghostwriter. I looked on Goodreads as well, and I couldn't see if there was a ghostwriter listed anywhere. I didn't go any further than that. I didn't take it to Google, but from a very quick search, I couldn't see one. And I believe that, just based on the way it's very simply, sort of conversationally written. It's not bad by any means, but it just kind of takes its time, and yeah, conversational's the simplest way I can put it. But I enjoyed it. It was nice to, it just felt good to sit and listen to her finally have a voice to tell her own story, knowing that, you know, for the past 13 or 14 years she had been in a wild conservatorship that her father was in charge of, where everything that she did, the money she spent, the food she ate, the people she saw, was controlled by her father. And so when you think of it, like, he's like, oh, she is crazy. Like, she is too crazy to be able to control her own life, her own finances, her own anything. But yet then on the other hand, he had no problem making her go on tour, making her do Vegas residencies. So she'd be working constantly and he'd be taking all the money. And there's one line shortly after the conservatorship is put in place where she's in her house. He's kind of setting up an office in her house, and he's sort of telling her how it's going to be. And he says, I'm Britney Spears now. Like, as in, I'm Britney Spears now. Everything I do, everything I say, that's what will go. And you have nothing. You have no part in it any longer, except to be a puppet to do what I tell you. And that is crazy. That's crazy. Especially when the things that led up to the conservatorship were a lot of grief, a lot of stress, a lot of postpartum depression. Like, she had just had her 2 kids. Her and her husband were getting divorced. He wanted full custody, which she doesn't implicitly say in the book, but from everything I can tell, from everything that I've heard about him and seen about him over the years, he wanted custody of those kids so that she would have to pay him. And that's crazy. That's crazy. So he fought her tooth and nail, and he made her look terrible. And so she would have the kids for a while, and then he would take them, but then it would be weeks. He would keep them from her. You know, she'd be waiting for him to bring them home, and he wouldn't. And he would keep them for weeks. And this would go on and on and on. And then every time they go to court, he would, like, be committed to making her look terrible, even though she had, like, therapists and like court-ordered family involvement specialists. That's my term. I don't know what they're called. Who would, you know, sort of testify on her behalf, saying, like, no, she's a fit mother. She's just going through a lot. And so eventually one time someone was coming to pick the kids up from her house, and she just knew in her gut she wasn't going to see them again for a long time. And so she took the baby and she hid in the bathroom with him because she'd had a death in the family. She was going through postpartum depression. And now she was terrified that her kids were going to be kept from her. And they came, they took the kids, and then they strapped her. They called, like an ambulance was called. She was taken to the hospital. She must have been losing her absolute mind. She was drowning in her grief. So yeah, I mean, I would recommend this to anyone who's, you know, interested in Britney. Whether, you know, you were around during the heyday back in the 90s, early 2000s, or whether you're younger and you've just recently gotten into her music, or maybe just her story from social media, because at the time when the Free Britney movement was going on, right before she got released from her conservatorship, I feel like she was everywhere, all over social media. And she addresses that in the book, saying how she was in either a mental hospital or a rehab at the time when one of the nurses kind of pulled her aside and was like, come look at this. And she showed her how on social media people were rallying around her, supporting her, wanting her freedom for her. And that was a really beautiful part of the book, actually. So yeah, I mean, that's really all I can tell you without going through everything, but that's the gist of it. So I would definitely recommend, if you're at all curious, like I was. I thought it was a good read. But again, I'm not going to be giving it a starred rating just because it's someone's personal story. You can't really star rate that. At least I can't. Maybe you can. But I can't. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. We're going to get back to spookier books again before October runs out. The next video is going to be on A Certain Hunger. Finally. I feel like I've had this book for 2 months and we're just now getting to it. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe, give it a like. That helps me a lot. And I'll see you again real soon. Bye.